Chapter 11, The Shadow Investor. Elara Vance sat in her office, the silence of the room amplified by the rhythmic ticking of a clock she had never noticed before. On her desk, a bank notification glowed with an ethereal, digital light. $20 million had been wired into the company account at 3 o'clock in the morning. The source was listed as an untraceable offshore entity, Black Ridge Capital. She checked her WeChat, her fingers trembling as she opened the chat with the Ridge Walker. There was a single new message waiting for her. The wolves are at the door, Elara. Use the funds to buy back the shares Marcus sold behind your back. You have 4 hours before the market opens. And one more thing, the message continued. Look in your top desk drawer. The one you keep locked. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She reached for the key hidden under her keyboard and pulled open the heavy mahogany drawer. Inside, resting on top of her legal files, was a single, dried mountain flower, a silver gentian. It was a rare bloom that only grew on the oxygen-thin peaks of the Black Ridge. A memory, sharp and painful, flickered in her mind. 3 years ago, on their wedding night, Caleb had handed her a flower just like this. He had looked at her with such hope in his eyes. She had laughed at him, calling it a peasant's weed, and tossed it into the wastebasket before the night was over. She looked at the flower now, its petals preserved in silver, then looked at the office door. Caleb was standing in the lobby, visible through the glass partition. He was carrying 2 greasy paper bags of cheap takeout, his posture slightly slumped, looking exactly like that useless man the world believed him to be. Lunch is here, Elara, he said, stepping into the office with a small, hesitant smile. Elara stood up, her eyes searching his face for even a flicker of the Ridge Walker's shadow. Caleb, were you out late last night? Caleb set the food on the desk, right next to the $20 million notification. I went for a long walk. The city air feels heavy this time of year. I needed to clear my head. Did you go near the business district? She pressed, her voice rising. I went where the wind took me, he replied, his voice calm and unreadable. He opened a plastic container of simple noodles. Eat, Elara. You're too thin. You can't fight wolves on an empty stomach. Elara looked at the noodles, then at the silver gentian. She felt as though she were standing between 2 realities, and the ground beneath her feet was finally starting to crack. Chapter 12, The Versace Revenge. Later that afternoon, Elara was forced to attend the Oakhaven Plaza charity luncheon. It was an event for the city's top-tier investors, and she knew she couldn't hide. Caleb followed behind her, dressed in a low-key, off-the-rack suit that made him look like a bodyguard rather than a husband. Bradley Vance was already there, despite his father's recent public firing. He stood in the center of a group of second-generation heirs, all of them draped in Versace and Guccio. When he saw Elara and Caleb enter, a cruel, jagged smile stretched across his face. Oh, look, it's the Queen of the Bankrupt, Bradley announced, his voice carrying across the marble hall. And she brought her mountain pet with her. Tell me, Caleb, did you have to wash the smell of dish soap off your hands before you came here? The socialites laughed, their eyes filled with performative pity. Elara gripped her clutch bag so tightly the leather groaned. Bradley, she said, her voice ice-cold. I thought you'd be busy packing your bags. Your father doesn't own a desk at Vance Global anymore. My father might be out, Bradley sneered, leaning against a gold-plated pillar. But I've just been hired as the senior consultant for the Oakhaven Plaza itself. I'm the one who decides which brands get to stay in this building and which trash gets evicted. He stepped toward Caleb, poking a finger into Caleb's chest. And my first act as consultant is banning you. Get out, before I have security drag you through the mud where you belong. Caleb didn't flinch. He reached out and caught Bradley's finger in midair. The movement was so fast, so precise, that the crowd didn't even see it happen. Bradley let out a sharp yelp of pain as Caleb applied a tiny, surgical amount of pressure to a pressure point in his knuckle. "The mountain doesn't like to be pointed at, Bradley," Caleb said softly, his voice dropping into a dangerous, low register. "And the Oakhaven Plaza? It changed ownership again at noon today." Caleb pulled a folded document from his jacket, a deed of sale stamped with the Thorne family seal. "Thorne Holdings didn't just buy the shares. We bought the land, the air rights, and the debt on every brick in this building. As the new owner, I find your consultancy services redundant." The Plaza security team stepped forward, but they didn't look at Caleb. They grabbed Bradley by the elbows. "Mr. Vance," the head of security said, "your badge is void. Please leave through the service exit." Chapter 13, The Mountain's Ledger. Caleb returned to the penthouse late that evening to find the lights off, save for a single lamp in the storage room. Elara was standing over his old, battered mountain trunk, the one piece of luggage he had brought with him 3 years ago. She was holding a heavy, leather-bound book she had found in a hidden compartment at the base of the chest. Her face was pale, her eyes wide as she turned the yellowed pages. "What is this, Caleb?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. "I was looking for an extra blanket, and I found this hidden under the lining." Caleb stepped into the room, the shadows of the doorway clinging to him like a cloak. "It's a ledger, Elara. My mother kept it during our 20 years in the Black Ridge Highlands. It is a record of the Thorne family's mercy. Elara opened the first page. Her breath hitched. The names listed weren't mountain peasants or local herbalists. They were the names of the 4 great families of Oakhaven. Under each name was a date from 20 years ago and a staggering, multi-billion-dollar amount. "The Thorne family didn't just have money, Elara," Caleb said, walking closer until he was standing just behind her. "We were the bank that rebuilt this city after the Great Market collapse. Every skyscraper you see from our balcony exists because my mother allowed the foundations to be poured. Even my grandfather," Elara whispered, pointing to a name at the bottom of the page. "He owed your mother $50 million. He didn't marry you to me out of charity, Elara," Caleb said, his voice tinged with a rare touch of sadness. "He did it to stay close to the source of the debt. He hoped that by keeping a thorn in the family, the debt would never be called in. He wasn't saving me. He was trying to save himself." Chapter 14, The Loyalty Test. The next morning, the Ridge Walker sent Elara a final location on WeChat. "Meet me at the old stone bridge on the outskirts of the city at midnight. Come alone. It is time you saw the face of the man who saved your company." Elara spent the day in a state of near paralysis. She watched Caleb move through the penthouse, doing the same mundane chores he had done for 1,000 days, but now every movement seemed like a calculated performance. At 11 p.m., she slipped out, driving her new Porsche into the thick, rolling mist of the valley. She arrived at the bridge to find a tall man in a dark, military-style overcoat waiting in the shadows. But as he stepped into the moonlight, her heart sank. He wasn't Caleb. He was younger, sharper, with the scarred hands of a soldier. This was Silas, the Thorne family's lead sentinel. "The master couldn't make it," Silas said, his voice sounding like gravel grinding together. "But he sent me to offer you a final contract, Mrs. Vance." He held out a gold-embossed document. "Thorne Holdings will wire you $100 billion tonight. You will become the richest woman in the history of this country. You will never have to answer to your board or your cousins again." Elara stared at the paper. "And the catch?" "The catch is simple," Silas whispered, stepping closer until he blocked her path back to the car. "You must sign the divorce papers tonight. You must leave Caleb Thorne and never speak his name again. A man like him is an anchor on a woman like you. Take the gold, and set yourself free." Elara looked at the dark, rushing water beneath the bridge. She thought of the shame, the mockery, and the 3 years of being the trash wife. Then she thought of Caleb's calm eyes in the morning light. He might be an anchor, Elara said, her voice finding a sudden, sharp clarity she hadn't felt in years. But he's the only thing that kept me from drifting into the abyss. Keep your 100 billion. I'm going home to my husband. She turned the car around and drove back into the mist, leaving Silas smiling in the dark. Chapter 15, The Golden Waiter. Caleb was waiting for her at their favorite steakhouse, the Gilded Prime. It was a place of extreme luxury, the same establishment where Elara's family had mocked Caleb's mountain appetite during their first anniversary dinner. The head waiter, a man named Julian, saw Caleb's worn boots and faded jacket and immediately blocked the path to the VIP section. I told you before, we don't serve guests who aren't in proper evening attire, Julian said, his voice dripping with condescension. He placed a reserved sign on the table Caleb had already sat at. This table is for actual patrons. You can wait by the kitchen door for your wife, or better yet, wait in the alley. Elara walked in just as Julian was reaching out to nudge Caleb's shoulder. She saw the scene and her hazel eyes flared with a new, protective fire. Julian, take your hands off my husband this instant, she commanded, her voice echoing through the dining room. Mrs. Vance, Julian said, bowing quickly. I was just explaining our dress code to your guest. The dress code is irrelevant, a voice announced from the entrance. Diana Thorne walked in, draped in Louis Vuitton and looking like she owned the very air in the room. Because I just purchased this entire restaurant group while I was in the elevator. Diana looked at Julian as if he were a smudge of dirt on an otherwise clean floor. You are fired. And you will be blacklisted from every high-end establishment in Oakhaven. A waiter who cannot recognize a king in a peasant's jacket is a liability to my brand. She turned to Caleb and Elara with a small, knowing smile. I heard my daughter-in-law made a very interesting choice at a bridge tonight. It seems she values the man more than the mountain's gold. Sit, Diana commanded. We are going to open a bottle of wine that costs more than this waiter's annual salary. We have a war to plan.